What notes do you give screenwriters the most?
Let's see, there's so many. I give some of the same notes so much that I now have a template of notes, right? So that, back in the day I used to have to rewrite the same note over and over and over. But now I kind of have a template of some of the notes that I give the most often. But I think the largest one is lack of a goal or a problem to solve, and lack of an inciting incident, because the inciting incident causes the goal or the problem to solve. So usually if there is no goal or no problem, it's because there was nothing that caused it. And so I end up giving those two things. Or I'll say your inciting incident is very clear. This is what it is. And anytime I do it, I follow it up with this is what it is. That way the writer can go, that's not what it is. And they can realize, oh, well, it's not as clear as you thought it was, right? But just because you have a clear inciting incident doesn't mean you now have a clear goal or a clear problem. And so that's the nuts and bolts of what your screenplay is. So if your inciting incident isn't clear, and if the goal that they're trying to achieve or problem they're trying to solve isn't clear, then now I'm going to be lost in the sauce of the rest of your screenplay because I don't know what I'm tracking. So kind of like an essay, right? You have your the first page of your essay, you have to have your thesis statement usually in your first paragraph, because the thesis statement is telling us this is what my hypothesis is. This is what I'm going to try to prove to you. And then all of the following paragraphs have the evidence of the thing that you hypothesized or the thing that you're trying to prove. So now I can read it and go, okay, this connects back to that. This connects back to that because I know what I'm tracking. The same thing is true in a screenplay. If you haven't given me that inciting incident and that goal or that problem, then I don't have a thesis statement, so I don't know what I'm looking for. So you can have a whole lot of adventure, a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of action, a whole lot of whatever. But what does it all mean if I don't know what I'm supposed to be tracking? If I don't know if this is even, if their story should even be taking them down that path because you didn't make it very clear for me what they were seeking in the first place.
How many tries does it take for most new writers then to, once you give them those notes, correct it? Several drafts?
Yes, but I think it depends on the person. Some people are great at revising, at addressing notes, right? That's another skill set that writers need to have. And not all writers have it. Just because you are revising doesn't mean you're solving the problem. Just because you're changing your script and writing another draft does not mean that you're fixing what the issue was, right? So you have to get a note that informs you of what the issue is, right? So we were kind of talking about development executives earlier, right? And most development executives are not writers. It's not an expectation for them to be writers, and there isn't a training program in story, for them to be executives. Like we talked about, they're coming in with their Rolodex of who they know. Their job is to connect people to each other. Their job is branding and marketing and all these things. And they're also giving you notes on your drafts, but they might not necessarily know the same language that you know as a writer because they didn't study screenwriting, right? So sometimes writers can be given a note that they simply just don't understand because they're not speaking the same language as the person who's giving the note. So it's harder for me to then say, well, that person doesn't know how to address notes when the note itself might have been the problem. Right? If the note is saying, hey, we have a problem here, but it can't tell the writer why there's a problem, then the writer is left to not only figure out the why, but also then figure out the how to fix it. Right? And so if they don't know what the actual problem is, then they're not going to be able to address it. And executives usually try to solve the problem for writers. And I spend a lot of my time when I'm doing my training with executives, I train them in story because I know, again, most of them are not writers. They didn't go to film school. They don't have to go to film school. There's no training in that. So I will work with executives so they can learn the act structure for whatever it is their brand is doing, try to teach them the jargon so that they can more effectively communicate with their writers, right? But let's say they don't have that information. So executives spend a lot of their times going, well, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? But again, if you don't know story structure, then your what if might be exacerbating the problem, right? And now the writer has been given examples of what they can do, and they may think the executive is telling me that's what I have to do. And so then they put into the script what the executive suggested, and the problem is still there. But neither of them knows why the problem is still there, because maybe neither of them know structure very well. You know what I mean? So if the note is clear and then the writer can't address it, then it might be that they just aren't very good at addressing notes. They might be great at giving you a good first draft, second draft, a good foundation, right? But when it comes to really making things clear, that just might not be their skill set. There are other writers who are great at that, who are not going to do the first draft, they're not going to do the second draft, but they're going to be able to come in and they're going to address those notes, right? And so I've dealt with some new writers who, after one or two times with talking to me, they're able to address notes, right? But that's also because I'm speaking their language. I'm talking to them in the language that they speak about writing. And then I have other clients where they can talk to me 10 times and they still won't be able to address the note, but that's just because they don't have the skill set to address the note. It's a totally different skill. And it's something that I'm going to figure out how to teach. So I've been giving more kind of workshops and talks on how to address notes. Because if you want to be a professional writer and you want to not be rewritten all the time and you want to be able to stay with your project from the beginning to the end, you have to be able to address notes. And I just think we don't talk about that often enough.
What if they understand story and you're speaking their language, but they feel that their version is right?
Yeah. So this is where you hope that there's an opportunity for open dialogue, right? On one side of it, it doesn't matter if you think it's right. Now that it's been purchased by this studio or network, it's theirs, not yours. So it doesn't matter that you think it's right. You know what I mean? They could be giving you a note because it's coming from the very top and this is what it has to be. You don't have to like it. Your job is to do it because at this point, they're paying you for it. That's literally your job. Now, with that being said, depending upon, like we said earlier, you got to read the room, understand the environment, know if this is one of those cases where it's like, you know what, let me just address the note. Or if it's, maybe I can talk to them about it. Then I would say the same thing needs to be true. You as a writer need to understand how to express yourself well enough to make them understand why you're right. And it's not by saying I'm right. You have to be able to show them in the script, if we make this change, it's going to have this ripple effect, which is going to cause this. Is that what you would like? The executive, who probably didn't understand, may not have understood the note that they were giving was going to make those changes, might go, oh no, actually, that's not what I want at all. But you wouldn't have known if you didn't ask. And it's about how you ask, right? Versus, no, we're not going to change that. It's blah, 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 blah. But being able to explain to them, well, for example, if the executive says, I don't like this moment where the daughter curses her mom out. I don't like that at all. And they decide to change it to the daughter coming in and saying something nice, right? That changes everything. Because if I say something negative to someone, we're going to take that negative tension into the next scene. If I come in and I say something positive to someone, we're going to take that positive tension into the next scene, right? And if the point was, the daughter curses out the mother in this scene because eventually they're going to get into an actual fist fight. If I change this and make it positive, how do we get them there? So then the question becomes, do you not want them to have a negative relationship? Do you not want them to get to this fight? Because the writer is going to be thinking, I still got to get them there. And will it now feel disingenuous if this moment is gone? How do we now show the trajectory of them going from one end of the extreme to the other, right? Whereas what the executive was really just trying to say is, I didn't like the word choice in how she was talking to her mother. I still want it to be negative. I just don't want her to curse. But if they can't be that specific, then now the writer's going, oh, they don't want any negativity at all. And now we got to change everything and blah, blah, blah. But being able to have that conversation is going to be helpful. And it's another thing that I tell executives about the notes process, right? Like a lot of places, and everybody does it differently because like we say, you got to read the room, you got to know what it is. Everybody does it differently. But a lot of places will give the notes in the moment to the writer. So the executives have gotten together, hopefully with the studio as well. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And they will get their notes together. And then they'll get on the phone with the writer and they'll read out the notes or discuss the notes with the writer. Now the writer has received all of this, what is considered negative information, because we're sensitive, right? So even if they said one time, really good job, but the rest of it was change, 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 change. All we're hearing is bad, bad, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad person. And then at the end of the phone call, they'll go, okay, do you got it? You good? And the writer is going to lie and go, yeah, everything's good. And then they get off the phone and now they're freaking out, right? Whereas if you're able to send those notes a day or two ahead of time, then the writer has an opportunity to cry, scream, whatever it is they're going to do, digest the notes, and then have questions prepared for things that they don't understand. but we usually don't get to the question part because we spent the whole notes call, reading out the notes. Well, they're writers. They know how to read. They can read the notes. They don't need you to read them to them. What they need is a discussion. What they need is to be able to say, so when you said you don't want the cursing, did you mean you don't want a negative relationship, or did you just mean that you want her to use different words? Now the writer has had time to digest and come back and ask the question. And now the executive can go, oh, yeah, it's just about the words. Right? But you have to have time in those calls to be able to do that. And you usually don't if you're spending the entire call giving the notes instead of being able to actually discuss them, so that the writer feels good about what they understand you're asking them for, which gets you closer to them actually being able to address the note. Then if they can't address the note, now you might be able to say, oh, this writer doesn't address notes well.
So should a writer maybe, and I don't know if this is overstepping their bounds, but ask, hey, is there any way I could just get the notes emailed to me first and then we can do the call? So then they can compose themselves and be just in a better frame of mind?
Yes, they can ask, and they can also say no. Right? But I think you can ask if you know that it's better for your process. And really, I think it's probably better for most people's process, right? Like, you don't want to be on the spot, because also depending upon what your relationship is with these executives or what their expectations are, they want you to pitch out your solves right then. So they're on the phone going, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Okay, so what are your ideas? And all you're thinking is, I'm just now taking in the fact that it doesn't work. I don't have an idea yet. I don't know how to fix it yet. I need to go think about it. But now you're on the spot and you're trying to come up with these answers, right? Whereas if you had the 48 hours, like I'll even say, don't send it. You don't want to send it out a week before, because you don't want a writer sitting in it, right? Because in our sensitivity, we will then try to address all those notes ourselves and then come back and go, well, we fixed it all, right? And it's like, no, we still need to talk about it to make sure we're on the same page, right? But I do think if you can give that writer 48 hours to read it, digest it, and come with their questions, then that's helpful. Some people just don't do it that way because of what I said before. They don't want the writers freaking out. So they don't want to send it to them ahead of time. They would rather be on the phone and allow the writer to hear the tone of their voice and, all of that. So they know this is not that big of a note and this is a larger note and we don't want you to freak out about this and blah, 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 blah. They'd rather be able to kind of control that. But no matter what, when a writer receives a note, they're feeling negative stuff. That's just what it is. Good critique, bad critique, whatever it is, we're feeling critiqued. You know what I mean? And so if you give us that time to kind of sit with it on our own, then we can come back and have more of a conversation so we can get to where we need to get. So I say, yeah, ask. Doesn't mean that you'll get it, but definitely ask.
Why do screenwriters think that executives are the enemy?
Because they're the ones that are giving the notes. You know what I mean? And, kind of like I said, any feedback can just be taken as, I'm bad, I'm wrong, right? So I spend time, working with screenwriters for them to understand that the executives have a job. Their job is to give you feedback. That is not a reflection of who you are as an individual, right? They have a job to do, which is, this is our brand, this is your story, and we need those things to be this. So that means I got to give you the notes that are going to get it there. Also, what I have learned, even with working with professional writers, is just because you're in this room as a professional writer doesn't mean what you write is perfect. You know what I mean? There are going to be notes. There are things that need to be changed. You can look at it as, look at all of the rest of the people who are part of my brainstorming committee, right? You're not on your own. We're so used to doing this by ourselves in our rooms, in our, in front of our computers, that we think that we're the only people who know our characters. We're the only people who can, decide which way things are going to go. But really, there are so many other people who are part of this process who can make your project fantastic. So be welcoming to the rest of the people in your brain trust. You know what I mean? And so, but I can understand them looking at them as the enemy, because they are the ones who are going to come slice and dice that thing. They're the ones who are going to come and possibly take it away from you, give you your check, take it away from you, and then go off and make it what they want to be. By the time it gets on screen, that could be for the better or for the worse. So I can understand how you could put them in that enemy box. But if you more so consider them your sidekick, you know what I mean? Like, they're the person who are here to kind of help you, if nothing else, help you make your money right? Even if the baby doesn't become the thing you want it to be, they are here to help you get to the end of your contract so that you can fulfill it and get your check. They are on your team, or at least they should be, right? And you never know what personalities are going to be like, and people have different personalities, and it might not be that easy of a process. But at the end of the day, they are here to help you. They want you to win. If you don't win, they don't win. Right? So they really do want you to win, even if it feels like they're always, the person who's bearing the bad news.